So on the way in, you should have grabbed one of the handouts. Tells you about our 3 locations, including a small surprise in there that we'll get to in just a second. But here's the super quick overview that you may have already heard, but just so that we're all on the same page, we've got 3 trips. We're really excited about it, and here's why I feel good about it, even though if you read the news, COVID is currently at its worst. It's okay. We're not being foolhardy about it. My own kids want to go on these trips, and I am not interested in running any undue risks or being irresponsible. Here's why we feel good about it. A few reasons. One, the vaccines are rolling out. The last I looked, now they're vaccinating something like 1.2 million people per day, with the goal of hitting 100 million sometime in April. Right? At that rate, they're going to achieve that. So that's a third of our population already. Vulnerable populations, frontline workers, that the general population by the time April rolls around will have or will be about to have the option to get vaccinated. So we're already going to be seeing a huge difference from that perspective. We're also going to be seeing a big difference because the weather is going to turn. Right now, part of why it's the worst is because of the colder weather. And so the weather is going to be turning with warmer weather. By the time we roll around to June, we're going to see the numbers dropping just like we did last year, in addition to what the vaccine is doing. And finally, we just, as a country, have a much better handle on this stuff than we did a year ago. It's kind of hard to imagine. We kind of shut everything down the weekend after our Renew conference last year. So we're coming up on almost a year of this. But we just, as a team, we kind of look at it and go, man, by the time June rolls around, the predictions that they're giving now is that the pandemic is essentially over in July. That it should. So we're feeling good. We feel confident about rolling ahead with these plans, especially as we have some precautions in place, and YouthWorks, who we're doing all the trips with, they have precautions in place as well that we feel really good about. If things were to take a turn for the complete opposite of what we're all expecting, we are not going to force these things to happen, right? Like, I am not so gung-ho as much as it broke my heart to postpone the trips last year. And maybe this is admitting I'm a big softie, but when I hit send on that email to all of you that we were officially postponing them to this year, I was down in my basement, like Star Trek room, and I cried. And I was like, I can't believe this is happening. We're not so determined that we're going to force things to happen against our better judgment. So we're keeping an eye on things. We feel good about it. If things were to skew totally different than what anyone is predicting or expecting, we're going to be responsible. We have 3 trips for our students who are currently in 7th and 8th grade. Their one option is the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania trip. We're really excited about it. Pastor Todd is actually going to be leading that trip. And you go, Pastor Todd, he's not a youth pastor? He was a youth pastor for a whole bunch of years before he became the senior pastor at his former church and now the executive pastor here. And we're doing it through YouthWorks, which is an organization that he has led his former youth groups through on trips with. And just the other year when we did our Puerto Rico trip with YouthWorks, he was a part of that mission trip from our church then. So Pastor Todd is going to be leading our Harrisburg trip for our 7th and 8th graders. They're going to be serving alongside community development organizations, doing stuff with children's ministries, working with kids, maybe doing some repair work and home improvements. Some of the things that they would normally do, like going to nursing homes and retirement centers, some of that might not be an option this year, just depending on where some of those vulnerable populations are at in regards to COVID. But they're going to have a lot of exciting opportunities to do work in the community, in neighborhoods, working on all sorts of different projects. You can see a summary of some of that on the page. We're also going to have some fun times out as well as a group for them to be bonding and getting to know each other. You know, one of our big purposes in these groups is to be building the relationships inside the group, right? That we build these lifelong friendships and memories. that really help us see spiritual growth happen both on the trips and in the small groups back here and the student ministry back here at the church. If you flip the page, the second page, some of you might be going, but you said we were going to Eastern Shore, Virginia, and now it says Charleston, West Virginia. So here's the exciting thing that sometimes happens to you when you're a youth pastor in a time of COVID. You send out an email one day telling everybody one thing, and your poor administrative assistant, who you keep dumping things on, prints up all of the stuff, just mountains of stuff, and then YouthWorks called us the next morning and was like, so here's the deal. It's not specifically a COVID-related thing. It was just more of that particular site was not getting enough registrations from groups for them to be able to commit to the ministries there. So they said, hey, we need to, at this time of the year, normally we would have a sense of how many groups are coming, and this site just isn't. Apparently people just didn't see the magic in it like we did. And so they were like, so it's not happening. And we were like, we're having a meeting on Sunday. Thank you. But so then we were checking out, and we saw that Charleston, West Virginia, it looks absolutely incredible. It's within our driving distance, so our dates stay the same. We were able to transfer our reservation to there. It had the gaps open for that same week. One of our priorities has always been to have all 3 trips happen the same week so that we can all return at the same time and take over the church service together on the Sunday morning. But that is contingent on everybody coming back on the Saturday right before. So Charleston, West Virginia, we have done with YouthWorks some trips to West Virginia in the past, some other communities, not the same one, but it's very similar. We've loved our time in West Virginia. There's going to be some similar things with the Harrisburg, where we're going to be working with some local children's ministries. We're going to be working with the Union Mission, which is helping out with some of the lower income parts of Charleston. We'll be working in some local senior centers and local churches. It's going to be a really exciting opportunity, as well as some really fun elements that we're going to be able to do as well as a group. I'm the one that's going to be leading that trip. That trip's open to our students who are currently in 9th through 12th grade. I'm really excited to be leading that. We're going to have an amazing time checking that out, road tripping down, and serving with YouthWorks there. And you can check out the page to get a little bit more detail about it. And then our third trip, normally we like to go international. And I know for some of you it might be a little frustrating that that's just not an option this year. Just with the way COVID is, the way it is in the rest of the world, that's just not something we can commit to this far out and not know where other countries are going to be at in June, the way we can know what things are going on. But we were still committed to wanting a cross-cultural experience. And so when we were looking into it, and Elijah and Ed Jones are going to be kind of the point people leading our South Texas trip. It's going to the southernmost corner of Texas in McAllen. They're going to be doing ministry with some local border ministries down there. So it's going to be in the U.S., but they'll be learning about border issues, which I love. I think that's a really relevant issue because it's been something we've talked about as a nation a lot in recent years, and I think it'll be great for our students to go there and see it firsthand and see what's going on. They'll be partnering with some ministries that are on the Texas side of the border that work with immigrants and help immigrants and work with them. And we're just part of, I meant to bring my cowboy hat. One of the things that we were so excited about doing this, so Elijah, our intern, he's been with us now for a year and a half. He's going to be leading that. And when we said, we're like, this is where we think we're going to be sending this team, we were kind of excited about it. We'll get the cross-cultural experience. It's going to be Southern Texas, so it's already kind of another world, Texas. Elijah, who's from Texas, but nowhere near there, right? Like, that'd be whatever. It's not like Delaware, where you can get to anywhere in an hour and a half. He started laughing, and we're like, what? And he was like, yeah, no, I totally know that place. His youth group, when he was a student, that's where they used to do their mission trips. So he's really pumped to be taking our currently 10th through 12th grade students. They're going to be flying there. They're not going to be driving. It's way too far to pull that off. They're going to be flying down there. He is pumped to introduce them to what we're really meaningful experiences for him as a teenager, as somebody their age back then doing ministry there. So we are excited about those 3 trips. You can grab us afterwards if you have some questions about them, but that gives you a little bit of idea. Some of you might be going, how come Melissa wasn't in any of those mixes? And some of you might know, but Melissa, do you want to explain why you're not leading a trip this year?
Yeah, I'll be like 37, 38 president.
Yeah, so she's going to be having a baby. She's going to be waving to us. I was like, well, anyways, I was going to make jokes, but none of that works very well for me in this kind of situation. So I've learned my lesson. Let me talk to you a little bit about some of the precaution stuff before we get into the application process. And YouthWorks actually sent us a PowerPoint presentation that they're using to kind of help people know what steps they're putting in place. Of course, we've been, as you know, we've been requiring masks in the building and a lot of that. A lot of the stuff they have in place is what we would do anyways, or that we would want to do to be responsible as we're kind of at the tail end of COVID and how we would approach this. So we're really happy with that, and that they're requiring it. So now we can just be like, they're requiring it, even though we would have. The first thing is their first arrive and stay healthy, which is a really nice way of saying one of the things that's going to be expected is that we're all going to take a COVID test before we're riding in vehicles together, close quarters for 6-7 days, whatever it is, before we're spending all this time around each other. We're all going to be getting a test result in the week of the trip, the week before the trip. So that way we get the results back. They usually take like 48 hours. The convenient thing is, if you haven't done it, in Delaware it's free. A lot of times it's drive-through. As we get closer to it, we'll send you guys the schedule and be like, hey, here's the one to hit up. I've done it way too many times, especially after the whole Pastor Nate COVID incident. I've been tested, no exaggeration, like 5 times in the last few weeks because I'm paranoid. I am paranoid, and I am COVID-free. They've checked my throat, my nose, I'm over it. Anyways, it's free. They get the results back to you in 48 hours, and so the first expectation is just going to be, hey, we're all going to show, starting out this trip, we've got a negative. In addition to that, this is a whole bunch of don't try to read that. That's just to impress you that there's going to be some documents in place for noticing any kinds of symptoms and tracking it and just being like, all right, we got a situation here. If somebody is starting to show symptoms of COVID, one of the leaders, like, they'll be heading home. We're not messing with it. We're not messing with it on the trip with the teams. We don't want to get the team sick. We don't want to get the sites that we're going to sick. And a lot of the work sites are going to have rules and guidelines as well for what that looks like to go there. So just kind of a lot of super fine print to say, hey, we're starting off the thing negative and we're trying to stay negative the whole time. Doesn't that sound great? Yeah, this is going to be a negative mission trip. Stay with your church. So some of you have been on YouthWorks mission trips before. Now, we will be going to sites that will have other youth groups at the site. Now, normally what YouthWorks does is they would mix up the teams a little bit. The sleeping quarters would be by team, but going to work sites, you'd have half of your van be from your group and half from another church youth group. It's a really great way for kids to meet other youth groups and things like that. That's not going to happen this year. This year, it'll be we may all be at the same host site, but we're not going to be mixing for work sites and in vehicles and sleeping cabins and stuff like that. For those kinds of things, our groups will be meeting each other, but we're going to be a little bit distanced that way. So, for example, unlike previous years where we would have been mixing everybody in the vans, if there's 3 youth groups at Harrisburg, Then the Brandywine kids will only ever be going in the Brandywine vans, and there will be no other kids from the other groups going in our vans and going in our sleeping rooms and things like that. It's going to be split up a little bit like that. Same with the work sites that we will be, there'll just be some extra layers of distancing going on there. Their phrase was, consider your church group your pod, bubble, or cohort. We're going to keep crews smaller as a subset in our church and not be mixing them as much. Same with serving safely and respectfully. In other words, the places we go to are going to have rules and guidelines, and some of those places, if we're able to go to a nursing home or retirement home or something, they're probably going to have additional rules in place than what we do, right? If we're helping in a homeless shelter or food pantry or in children's ministry, there might be some extra guidelines for how we prep ahead of time or how we interact with the people that we're interacting with. We will be respectfully following whatever those different sites require and ask of us. One of the parts of a youth work site is there's usually a large group time. And when I say large group time, like some of the sites I've gone to in the past, there's typically been 60 to 80 kids and youth leaders total at a site. We're usually 20 or 30 of them. So it might be a few churches. Some of that's already being dialed back this year to smaller amounts already because of capacity limits. But in the large group times, usually at the end of the day, there's a large group worship time. And so some of the things they're going to be doing a little differently this year is instead of, instead of how it would normally be where we're all just like, woohoo, mixing all together, hugging and whatever. The whatever sounds dangerous. It's not. Just worshiping together, end of the day, large group worshiping time, usually a message from the Youth Works team. Normally, it's all of us kind of mashed together because everybody likes to be close together after a long day of working and sweating. And this year, it'll be more like our groups, that there'll be 6 feet between the different youth groups. So not that in our group, because it really, like realistically speaking, the team I take to West Virginia, we're going to be around each other a lot, right? On the van rides and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean that we want to be mixing in with, so there'll be spaces between the different groups. They're going to be intentional. One of their goals is whenever possible, eating times, the large group gathering times, if weather is permitting it, we're doing it outside. Spaced out, outside, fresh air, masks on, whole 9 yards. I got the screens ahead of my notes. Yes. Outside. Same, which the large group time is called the gathering. That's going to be adjusted to follow these guidelines. When it comes to meals, typically, we all hang out, we all jam together on our tables and whatever. This year, it's going to be kind of a similar thing where our groups, like our Brandywine crew, will be at a table together. We won't be mixing, so much at the mealtime. They're going to be spacing out. If they can't space out in the building enough, then they'll be using multiple rooms or even doing meals in shifts, like Brandywine gets to eat now, this other youth group will eat next. But they're taking a lot of precautions. It's not going to be buffet lines in the past where we were all serving ourselves. The staff is going to serve us so that you have a single point of contact handling the food. When it comes to sleeping rooms, this is the part I'm most excited about because this is how it usually is. That looks a lot less crowded than I experienced the last time I was West Virginia, right, Tommy? Yeah. There was no room on that floor. It was like this is how we get to know each other. Yeah, it was you, it was Cruiser. Oh yeah, my CPAP making noise. It's like white noise, so we can all whatever. Let's move on. This year, they're being very intentional about, again, Sleeping quarters are going to be, first and foremost, by church groups. So there's no groups mixing in sleeping rooms anyways, which has usually been the way it is. But they are going to be intentional about having enough space that we're able to space out so that, you flip the way people are laying so that everyone's head is 6 feet away from anyone else's head in the room while we're sleeping, at least 6 feet apart. So they're going to be spacing us out that way. So when we're sleeping, we're distanced. I just think that's the funniest title in the whole thing. Shower exclusivity is like the most ridiculous way to say they are going out of their way. In past years, we've done things where we've used the local YMCA for showers, and so it's like a lot of other people are using the building and stuff like that. They're really committed to, they are finding places where when the Brandywine group goes to use shower facilities, it is only our group using those facilities. There aren't other people coming and going. The exposure is very much limited. So, shower exclusivity. I'm saving that from now on. Anytime my kids are banging on the bathroom door, I have exclusivity to this bathroom. Go away. All right. So that was a super quick flyover. If you want to shoot questions in the chat, if you're on Zoom, you can do that. If you're sitting there going, man, I got questions, afterwards, Melissa, Elijah, and I, we're going to be hanging around until anyone that has questions can ask their questions. So let's fly on to the next thing. You should have grabbed a couple packets on your way in. And so just to clarify one thing, if you signed up for the mission trips last year, you're in, but we still do want you to fill out the application packet. Most of it for, we need a medical release from this year, but some of it is even just practical stuff of, we want to make sure we have your current phone numbers, your current contact info. We need to have your current t-shirt size. I know my kids none of them would be happy if we got them the t-shirt size they put on the forms last year. So it's just up-to-date information, but when you grab the informational packet, this is different than the application packet. It just gives you some stuff like our key dates. When you open it up, there's key dates for each of the mission trips. Now, one of the things you might notice, now we're asking, we like to get the applications in early February. It just administratively, it's easier to plan. It's easier to do that. And especially for those of you that are already registered from last year, just get it into us because, we're ready to roll. There's only a couple things initially happening. There's a letter writing workshop. We want everyone to come to that. And you might go, but I actually raised all my support last year. I'm good to go. Well, we still want you to write a letter to your supporters to let them know, hey, here's what's happening. I'm not going to Jamaica. I'm going to Texas. I'm not going to, whatever it was. I'm going to here. To update them on, here's the plan. We're excited, and here's where we're going. Here's what we're going to do. If you need to raise support, it'll be a time to be walking through how to write that letter. Everyone that goes on the mission trips, we want you to be a part of the Renew conference. It's just it's an awesome team building time. It's an awesome learning time. And because we think it's such an important time, we factor it into the cost of the trip. So if you've registered for a mission trip before Renew conference, you don't need to pay for Renew conference. It's just part of that. You're signed up. We are going to get more assertive. I was going to say aggressive, but that sounds so threatening. With our meetings after April, after Easter, that's when you'll start seeing the mandatory team meetings where we really start to prep for the mission trips. Why? Because right now, COVID is at its worst. And I know for some people, if your kid isn't already in a trip from last year, maybe you're sitting there going, I don't feel comfortable registering my kid for something in June with what I'm reading in the headlines today. And so while we would like to know as soon as possible, especially since some of the trips may fill up, the sooner we know you want to go, the better. We're putting it right on the application. We'll continue to accept new applications. So your friend that wants to go, the current 7th grader that wasn't even an option last year, or the 10th grader that couldn't do it last year but now does want to. We'll continue to accept those applications until April 4th, I think is when Easter is, right? Because I think by the time April hits, you're going to have much more of a sense of where things are going in the country, how things feel. And so if you're sitting there going, man, I want a little bit more time before we lock in a commitment to this, you've got it. And so that's why we're being a little intentional with some of that mission trip prep. Some of you are going to notice there's no home ministry hour commitment form this year. Normally, we expect people to do 20 hours of local service for a mission trip, and we will do it again next year, but not this year. And here's why, is because normally now is when you would be doing that. And I don't want to put people in the uncomfortable position of being like, I don't feel comfortable going out to some local organizations or serving in these different capacities until some of these numbers drop down. So this year is the one year we're not requiring those 20 hours. And for a lot of you, you normally get them from VBS. We didn't have VBS last summer. So it didn't make sense to push that this year. All that to say, there's a lot of key dates on those first few pages. And now is the time to start blocking those out in your calendar so that you know when to go. There's a page about being ready, being prepared spiritually. This is just great stuff for praying through and thinking through what I want to do to be ready for this mission trip. There's some reminders about what you're committing to. When you sign up for a trip, you're committing to coming to the meetings. You're committing to the entire mission trip, including the Sunday morning report when we come back. For so many people at our church that give towards these mission trips to make them possible, that Sunday morning is their favorite Sunday of the year. Hearing the stories from you of what God taught you and showed you through these trips. It's just an incredible time. Recruiting your support team. Support's going to be a little funky this year, right? Because there's 3 possible scenarios. One, you signed up for trips last year, you fundraised, you got your goal, you already raised everything you needed to raise, so now you go, well, I don't need to do anything this year. Well, you need to update your supporters. You need to let them know, hey, here's what's going on. We already kind of talked about that. A second possibility is you signed up for a trip, and I know there were a number of people last year that as COVID started to hit, told their supporters, hey, just hold off. Let's see how this plays out before you send in the support. So maybe if you check Manage Missions, if you forgot how to log in, shoot Michelle an email. She'll get you connected. You're looking at it going, I've raised 200 or I've raised 300 of my $700 goal or whatever it is, depending which trip you're going on. So I'm not all the way there, but I'm certainly not far enough off that I need to do the number of letters that we would normally recommend for that trip. So if that's the case, maybe you just need to write 10 or 20 letters, a handful of letters, to raise the rest of that difference. The third possibility is you're completely new to the teams this year. You weren't signed up last year, so you're starting from ground zero. Then you really do want to do the recommended numbers of support letters we do, because those seem to kind of work out to this is how many letters you need to write to raise the amount of support that's usually needed to go on the trip. But recruiting your support team isn't just about financial support, it's also about the prayer support. So that's why wherever you are on the financial support side, we want you to be sending something out, even if it's not to raise money, it's just simply to say, hey, please be praying for me. Here's what's going, here's what's happening this year. I want your prayer. There's some suggestions for how to write a good support letter. There is a example page on page 11 of here's the important info to have in it. Do not just copy and paste this letter with your name in it, because people will be able to tell. There's always, they don't want 5 of the same letter from 5 different kids.
Except for the part that says copy word for word.
Right. There's a few legality type stuff when it comes to making donations. That has to be just copied word for word. But a great example of how to incorporate that information, but personalize it to you, is the sample letter on the following page. Do something like that. Personalize it. Why are you excited to go? What are you looking forward to? What are you hoping to learn? And so then as you prep those, you'll give us a draft. We'll look over and go, yep, you hit it all. This is great. We'll be doing that at our letter writing day. We want everybody at that. And once we've given you that okay, then you can start putting together all your letters. You would stamp the self-addressed stamped envelope that goes on the inside. We'll put the postage on the outside letter. That stuff's in there. The application form, like I said, we want everybody to fill it out, even if you were registered last year, partially because we need you to check the box on which trip you want to go to. We need your current contact info. We need your current t-shirt size. I would like to have, on the second page, there's some stuff about where you are spiritually. Be honest on that. Like, there is not you are not going to write something that I go, well, nope, yeah, they're not going on a trip. One of my favorite applications ever, and I talk about it every year, was a kid years ago who literally wrote on it, I'm not a Christian, I don't believe in God, but I'm open to learning about it, and I want to serve. Like, essentially, they're going, I want to serve. This is a service trip. I can do that. I'm not antagonistic about the faith stuff, but it's not really where I'm at. I loved it because now as a leader, I'm not going to put that kid up in front of everyone to deliver a message, right? Now don't take that as this is how I get out of. I would much rather, and same with all the other leaders, we'd much rather have a sense of where you're actually at so that we don't put unrealistic expectations on you or ask you to do things that are not where you're at. But it also helps us to prep for the trip and helps us to know how we can be helping each other. There's some things where you sign, read the commitments to what you're committing to, and then, of course, the medical release form, the prayer partners, we want you to fill that out and get 5 people to commit to praying for you. Do not try to do that on the day that you're turning in the application. Every year, I say this warning, and every year somebody doesn't listen to me because they think that'll be super easy. I'll just do it at church. It's not that easy. Like, you're running around. Just shoot some people a text. If you're wondering, who do I ask to pray for me on my prayer support checklist of finding 5 people that are committing to praying for me? Well, if you're in a small group, you already have 2 or 3 adults right there that'll do it, right? So shoot them a message. Hey, will you pray for me on this trip? They're probably going to say yes. If there's some other adults or your parents have some friends, shooting them an email or a text ahead of time and ask them, would you be willing to do this? And then you just fill in their info that they're committing to being praying for you for this trip. And then, of course, the medical release stuff. I just flew over a whole bunch of paperwork. If you've done it before, it's a lot of old news, but just reminders and some of the tweaks that we're changing up this year. If it's all new to you, we'll hang out afterwards to talk a little bit about it. Melissa, am I missing anything? No way. People, this has never happened before. 2021 is going to be a good year. All right. Normally, I ramp up a lot more, but snowflakes are starting to drop. Let me pray for us. I really am excited about our trips. We already have, I've been excited. I haven't even gotten aggressive with recruiting adult leaders for the mission trips yet, and so many of my small group leaders who we usually like to go to first because they have relationships with the kids, already so many of them have been telling me they want to be a part of it this year. And legitimately, to me, there's 2 reasons why we do these trips. The one, half of the reason, is spiritual growth. And there's just incredible spiritual growth that happens on these trips. Kids are out of their comfort zone, they're challenged, they grow, they get to know each other, they build these lifelong relationships and memories. The other half is meaningful service, that we're doing something significant. And when we go to YouthWorks and we go to these different partner sites, if you look at the paper, you're going to see some of these communities YouthWorks has been serving in for almost 2 decades and going to the same sites year after year. And we'll show up and we'll do something for a week, and then another team after us will do it the next week, and then another team the next week, and then another team the next week. And the cumulative effect is significant, important ministry is going on to help support these ministries in the areas we're going to that enable them to have year after year of impact on their communities. And so I love that we get to be a part of it. I'm so excited that I think we have a good plan for doing it this year, and that our teens are going to have an amazing time. They're going to have an incredible time with their friends in a way that we really haven't been able to for the last 12 months. They're going to have an incredible time seeing some new places, building new friendships, going deeper with friendships they already have. I just think all around, this is going to be a great way to kind of end this whole COVID last year and a half at that point. But let me pray as we finish off the meeting, and then, like I said, we're going to hang out, so you can head out if you need to. Oh, the one thing I would ask is if you could put your chairs, we just need to line them up all along this wall, then we're going to spray them, and then they'll get put away later. But part of our procedures is you sat in the chair, so you move it, one person handling it. Yeah, let's do it along the back wall, and if there's too many chairs for the whole back wall, then wrap it along this wall too, except for the doorways. Sometimes I feel like I don't need to say stuff, but then if I don't, somebody. All right, let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for these opportunities. We thank you for these trips. And God, we know that you already know what's going to happen, who's going to be on which trip, what you're going to teach us, what you're going to show us, the opportunities you're going to give us. We're so excited to see what you have in store for us this year. That whatever, even as we just changed a location this week, we know that no matter where we're going, the mission is serving you and growing in you, and that we are so thankful that you have this in store for us. Bless this time, God. I ask that you would help people as they make decisions, that you would give them confidence in what they do in the coming days and weeks. In your name, amen.